Welcome to the Forever Remembered podcast, Finding Help After Loss. A space created for families navigating stillbirth and infant loss, and for anyone searching for support, understanding, and hope after grief. This podcast is brought to you by the Ari Foss Foundation, where we help families facing the unimaginable through financial assistance, education, and community. My name is Aaron Silverman, co-founder and executive director of the Ari Foss Foundation, and I'm your host. Today I sit with Judy Heath. Judy is a psychotherapist and grief specialist based right here in Charleston and is the founder of the Life Guidance Center. She has spent over 25 years helping people move through grief and trauma, and she's the author of No Time for Tears, Coping with Grief in a Busy World. Judy has also done grief work on a national scale, including counseling at in New York City Fire Department after September 11th. And then Judy's not only helped individuals cope with loss and navigate the journey, she has also lost a child at a young age as well, so she has been on the grief journey that many of us have been on. I think most importantly, Judy's connection to the Ari Foss Foundation is she was Laura's therapist after we lost Ari. And so you were with us when the unthinkable happened and helped us in our darkest moments, and you helped our family move forward and heal. So, like, for me, this is not just good to help families out there, but cathartic for me to meet with you and talk with you about this.
Thank you.
So Judy, thank you for being here, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Me too.
So before we dive in, can you tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself and what led you to focus on grief and trauma?
Sure. So many years ago, I lost a child, a 5.5-month-old son, to SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, and my life turned upside down. And so what happened, Jesse, his name was Jesse, and I also had a child that was 4 years old when that happened. So that was Carl. And I felt the need to get help myself and to also try to help him through this loss. And luckily, I had a wonderful therapist who was a bereavement specialist who helped me with that. And years later, I made the decision to switch out of my vocation, which at the time was, I was a copywriter, I was a writer, I've always been a writer, worked for newspapers, worked for marketing, and it just, although I never stopped writing, it wasn't the right fit for me anymore. So I went back to school and I changed my career to becoming a clinical social worker specializing in grief and trauma. And so that's how it came about. It was Jesse led me to make this career change, and to the rest is just like a path I went down. So. Wow.
So your loss changed your trajectory.
Yes.
Is similar to me, like with the Ari Foss Foundation.
Yes.
I never thought I would be in the nonprofit world, but through loss, this is where I found, and I have found comfort and healing through helping others through the Ari Foss Foundation. So I didn't realize that we were similar in that nature.
Yes, I thought about that before this interview, and by the way, it was such a pleasure to help your wife and your family through your loss, and it is the unthinkable for sure. But yes, your journey changes, your life changes after a loss like this, and how it changes, you have some say about. But the fact that it's going to change, it just does.
Yeah, I always said it's finding the new normal. There is no going back.
Yes.
And so, personally, it took me years and years and years. So
definitely
it varies for everyone. Your loss and our loss, there's a big difference. And Ari was our first child. You had an older child, so you didn't just grieve on your own. You also had to care for another child. And so, like I say, there is no right way to grieve because it is so different between families, because every situation is different, every loss is different. And so what do you wish every grieving parent knew in those first few days and weeks? Because some people feel like they grieve wrong. And so how do we look at that? I know, real quick, I thought I grieved wrong. I'm one of those parents because I hid myself in work. So I hid from grief. So I didn't do grief wrong. I avoided it for a while, which was wrong to do. And so, what some advice would you give in those first few days and weeks to a family? So what I want to say is that there is no right way to grieve. Absolutely is the loss of a child, in my experience, is probably shatters parents to the point where they're lucky they know their name. They're lucky that they can survive it and just go through a normal day. So some people run from it and dive into work, or you can have somebody who already had a pre-existing condition of anxiety or depression, and sometimes doctors will put them on medication right away. But because it feels like you can't just be you anymore. You're a completely different person. Your memory doesn't work as well. Your focus is not as good. So there's so many changes in the beginning stages of grief, and everybody does grieve differently. You're right about that. And so, I think that there is no right way to do grief. It just is. You've got to get through the first days, the first weeks. I do believe it helps to have some support, and that can be a therapist, that can be a clergy member, that can be a group that you become a part of. You need the support, especially with the loss of a child, because it's a complicated kind of grief. And sometimes you can get stuck in the trauma part of it and not move through your grief. And I don't want to gender, I don't want to say anything about genders, but I will say that in my experience that men tend to throw themselves into work. That's a very common way that men will deal. And also they won't talk about it as much. And women have this need to voice it and talk about it. Now, it's not across the board, and everybody has a different grieving style. But So my advice is not to judge yourself, and to try, if you can, to allow yourself time. This is something you must process. This is not something anybody knows how to do correctly. Even the experts have to talk to the people and see what works best for them in their grief. There is no one size fits all. Yeah, looking at Laura and I's grieving process, there was a lot of talk, and we really did lean on each other. We were our support, and when she first got therapy, it was because she kept trying to process information, things, and I couldn't give her any help. And so I kind of felt helpless. I was like, you need to seek out therapy. Mm-hmm. And then I started after that. But yeah, so it was just so different in how we approached it.
It is.
So speaking of ways to cope, I mentioned you wrote a book. So in your book, No Time for Tears, you offer some tools for people to cope. Is there one, let our audience know where they can get the book, and then two, what are maybe a tool or two from there that you refer back to, you've referred to more over the years than others?
Okay, sure. So my book has been around a little while, and it's available in bookstores. It's available on Amazon. A lot of people now listen to it. It's right. More audio. There's a narrator. She's wonderful, by the way, and so it's available wherever you get books. So things that I try to help people with in the beginning is, like I was saying, you are just lost and trying to figure out, the world has shattered, okay? The unthinkable has happened. So don't expect yourself to be who you were before. That's where people fall into a problem, because they'll throw themselves back into work, but then they're not functioning the way they normally function. And your brain is affected. It's affected by the trauma. And if it's a sudden loss, which mine was, and yours was,
Yep.
then you have to get through the trauma before you even hit the grief. You're in shock for a long time when it's a sudden loss of a child. And it's also not to judge oneself, because part of what society tells us is that our job is to keep our children safe. And so we're so hard on ourselves to think we failed the most important job in the world, when quite often it was out of our control, out of our hands, and something happened, an accident happened, there was something medically wrong with the child. It doesn't help psychologically, even when you know that. You can still be really hard on yourself. And that can lead to so many problems of unresolved grief. So I say not to judge yourself too harshly. And also for coping, just simple things like your memory is not what it was. Mine happened in my 30s, and I felt like I suddenly was 80 years old. I couldn't remember stuff. I don't know if that happened to you. And I think it's important to make notes for yourself and to say, I've got to do this today. Even if you're a person who does lists, maybe you have to do it even more. Maybe you have to remember. And it is difficult if you have children to take care of, or a child to take care of, when you have a loss of another child. But I will say that my son Carl saved my life, because I had to get up in the morning. I had to take care of him. So that, for me, gave me a sense of purpose. I think it can be more difficult sometimes when you don't have a child that will focus you on what you must do. It can be either way very difficult.
And so, I only have my perspective.
Right.
And so I look at your situation and go, that had to be so much harder.
Right.
Because you had to be there for your other son.
Yeah.
And so it's just, there is no one is harder than the other. It's just, it's what you go through. And I couldn't imagine if we had another child there, just the amount of grief that was there, and then having to go through those normal processes. But I can see how it would be a benefit as well. Not a benefit, but as a way to keep
it motivates you, me. It motivated me.
Yeah.
I had to take care of this 4-year-old, and that helped me.
Yeah. Wow. That's a rough one. Real quick note, though, I always say it broke me when we lost Ari. Mm-hmm. Shatter is a much better word, because when you shatter, you shatter a glass table. This glass table, pieces go everywhere. Whereas you can just break a bone as one break. And so I think I'm going to shift and start saying shattered, because that is my whole world ended, and it was and the person sitting here is not the person who was here July 29th, 2014. July 30th changed me. And so breaking is not sufficient.
Yeah, so, you're right. It's true. It's a shatter. But you're broken as well,
Oh yeah, definitely broken, but shatter is just a more apt description of it. So so we've talked about the personal perspective for a little bit.
Yeah.
But let's shift to the couples. The couple piece of this. So when we were in the hospital, Laura was, looking up on the phone, just researching, because we just, stillbirth was brand new to us. We had no idea that this was even a possibility that could happen. And she found that a lot of couples, when they lose a child, end up going through divorce. Yes. They break up. So, so that loss can put, whether you're married or not in another type of relationship, can put a real strain on that. So do you have any advice for how couples can stay connected rather than drifting apart as they navigate? So they're on the same journey, but they're doing it differently.
Yes.
So how can any tips on how they can better connect through this process and journey?
I often say that people either come closer together or they or it doesn't make it. The marriage doesn't make it. And one thing right off the bat, Aaron, is not to judge the other's grieving process. Okay? It sounds strange, but it's like somehow we feel that the way we're doing it is the only possible way that it could be done. Like, I can't function. How are you going to work when I can't even get up in the morning? You know, we look at what each other is doing and judge the other person's grieving style. I call it a grieving style. And if you can take the onus off of that and just allow that person to grieve as they would naturally grieve, and you to allow yourself. Some people go within themselves. Some people can't be alone. There are so many different ways, and if you can have patience with the other person and let them let it out or do it the way they need to do it. And I would say also there's a certain, you know, if you have teamwork, if you can, instead of dividing, to try to do projects or little things together. If you can't get stuff, you know, you can't do it yourself because you're, to rely on that other person and say, look, I just can't make dinner tonight, and can we do it together? To join together to just get through the day and make it, instead of judging or, and that's one aspect. I could literally talk about this stuff all day long. But another aspect is with loss and loss of a child, there can sometimes be an enormous amount of guilt, but also to be blame, you know, a tremendous amount of blame. Okay, one person was home with the child, the other person wasn't there. I've seen many cases over the years where blame could set in, and if that happens, it will corrode the entire marriage. There's almost no loss that doesn't have some guilt attached to it. So working on guilt and blame, that's why I think maybe some bereavement therapy or counseling, and even together if you need to give it a shot, to try to make yourselves come together rather than pull apart.
Yep. Yeah, I know Laura and I both had guilt and blame, but it was in like we each blamed ourselves for the situation happening. We didn't blame each other.
Right.
So we were both telling each other, you didn't do anything wrong. Don't blame yourself. Don't feel guilty. And then I would tell her that. She would tell me that. And then it's like we both felt the other one did nothing wrong, but yet neither one of us could really accept it for a long time.
Yes.
And so I think that's one thing that helped us. Neither one of us blamed the other one.
Yeah.
Because we both know that person had nothing in what happened.
Yes.
And so we were along that process when something bad happened, and neither one of us did anything.
It was wonderful. I actually remember that you two did work together and try to help each other, and that's a wonderful thing. It's a different kind of a scenario sometimes where maybe somebody's driving a car and a child is in the car with them and they have a car accident.
Oh, yeah. And
then all of a sudden there's this tremendous guilt. I keep touching your microphone, I'm sorry. It's where my heart is. And there's this tremendous guilt, and also there can be blame there. So the thing to work on is that it was an accident, that anybody can have a car accident. That can happen. We've all had them. Most of us have had them. So that there's nothing intentional. There's no motivation. You are both hurting so deeply, and you need each other more than ever.
So, real quick tangent, because you made me think of something I haven't thought about in a long time. After we lost, I'm self-employed. I own a property management company. That's what I do full time. And I listen to a lot of business podcasts. And some of these guys were, you know, they all had done business, and there was a big theme through a lot of them was you are responsible for everything that happens to you in life. And that were like while trying to go through the grieving process, because they were like, even if you are at a stop sign and someone rear-ends you from behind, You put yourself at the stop sign, and so it's ultimate accountability for everything. And I was just like, and these guys were successful, quoting successful here. For those listening, not watching video, I'm quoting successful here. And that was troublesome for a while. And then one day it just clicked, and I was like, these dudes are blowhards. They have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to full accountability, because there are times where something happens that you had zero control over.
That's right.
And like, yeah, you made the decision to get in the car and drive, and you're sitting at the stoplight like you're supposed to be doing, but it's not your fault if someone rear ends you or if someone else runs that stop sign.
Oh, you can poke so many holes in that. I mean, just consider a young woman who's raped, right?
Right, exactly.
And I saw a woman she was 13 years old. She was in school going from one class to another, and that happened to her. And she blamed herself for that, right?
That's horrible.
But that's blaming the victim.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's as you're out there looking for advice, be careful who you listen to.
Yes.
Just because there's someone that's popular with a podcast, and don't listen to me on grief. Listen to her. She's the professional.
Oh no, you've been through it.
I've been through my own, but like I'm not one to take advice from. And so, who you listen to online and read, make sure they're credible and they know what they're actually talking about, because you can't go down rabbit holes. It's the internet, and so and so you do need to.
That's
be careful.
a good point, Aaron. Very good.
So we've touched on the individual parent and then as a couple, but let's expand that a little bit more. So we've all heard the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. So we've shifted that a little bit to be, it takes a village to remember a child. And so for our listeners who are not necessarily grieving themselves, but someone that they care deeply about or they love is going through it, do you have any advice that they can do to help, or is there anything that friend or family member shouldn't do?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I've heard it all. Well, here's what I think I remember myself. Something that was difficult for me was somebody said to me, God doesn't give you more than you can handle. Okay, so that's a lovely sentiment. However, there are people walking around in, psychiatric wards, and that did not comfort me. And think cliches, although they may comfort people with different kinds of losses, this is not one where cliches are going to be helpful. And really, unless you've lost a child, you don't really know, am I right? Yeah. How this feels. So don't try to think that you know how it feels, but ask them if they're in the mood. Let the person who's had the loss lead the charge on that. If they want to talk and they start talking, just be a really good listener. Also, sometimes it helps if you can just do things for the family, like if there's other children, maybe take them to school and give the parents a day to themselves, or making meals for the family is helpful. Things that you can do, and sometimes if they're open and you're very close to them, you can ask them, what would be the best thing for me to do to help you? I know there's nothing I can really do. I love you, giving them support, telling them that you are so sorry for what happened. That's okay. It's awkward, it's difficult to try to find the right words, because quite honestly, there are no right words. It's just being there and being supportive, and them knowing that you are there for them. That really helped me a lot. My family gathered around me. I don't even remember everything that was said, or I just remember them being there.
Meals are a big one.
Oh yeah.
after we lost Ari, someone, I don't remember who, wanted to sign up for a meal train, and Laura asked me, and I said, absolutely not. I don't want anyone in the condo. I just want to be by ourselves. And my wife said, well, I want people to come over, so happy wife, happy life. I said yes. And so I don't remember everyone who brought food over, but I remember how I felt. For that hour and a half that they were there, I felt like I got to escape for a little while.
Yes.
And so even though it was a brief reprieve, it was necessary. And so it was nice.
Yeah.
And so taking food is, now don't go taking food if they don't want it, but ask. And so, which is the exact opposite of about what I'm about to say. The night we lost Ari, we had to tell people. And so I told my best friend Josh that we lost Ari. And he's like, what can I do? Can I come see you? And I was like, no. We're in the hospital, no. And he goes, oh, where are you at? And I told him, and he said, okay, all right, well, just let me know. And then a little while later, he's knocking on the door at the hotel room. And he was just like, but he's one of my best friends. So
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
He says, like, I don't care what you said, I'm here. He's my only friend that has a picture holding Ari. And so, like, I treasure that, and I love him. Like, it was, he knew he needed to be there, and he ignored what I said. But he's also my best friend, so like
that's it.
That,
You know,
he knows
it's so
me
true.
that well,
It's so true.
And so sometimes when someone's going through it and it's so immense, I mean, that was within 24 or 48 hours. He knew what was needed, but like I have other friends that would have been like, why are you here? Like, this is a little step too far. And so you got to know your friend and know how close you are with them.
Yeah, there was a young man who he and his wife lost a baby, and right away his sister came into the house and started taking the baby's clothes out, because she was trying to protect her brother and his wife from seeing all these things that she felt were going to hurt them. You know, it was not a good thing. So he called her up and said, please bring them back. Please bring the items back that you took. And so you do need to hear and not make assumptions of how you would feel or what you've been told. You really need to know the person, and that guy knew he needs me. Yeah.
And it's and it can be hard when you're going through the grieving process to ask for help. So when Laura wanted some clothes, I went back to the condo to get them. So I've given presentations to nursing organizations who want to learn how better to interact with families. And so one of the things I talk about, like nurses really are the front line here of dealing with the grief, because they're a lot of times there when that loss occurs. And I was like, some advice you can give, and I'll talk about how I went home to get Laura's clothing. I walked into the condo, and then there was all this stuff on the floor, like in the kitchen, the living room, and like I broke down, and then I just knew Laura wouldn't want to see that, so I threw it all into the nursery. Like, in retrospect, I wish I would have called one of my parents, because they both live here. I wish I would have called one of them or a friend to go with me. And so like I should have asked for help, for someone to go along with me. I probably shouldn't have been driving in that kind of broken, shattered state. And so it is hard when you're that broken to ask for help, but you really need to.
You do, and it does take a village. It really does. I like that you say that. It's true.
So we learned that through a local marketing association, worked with us and helped develop that. So
very cool.
Thank you to them if you hear that, because they presented the idea, and at first I was like, I don't like it. And I was like, but they presented it to Maggie, and then she told me, I was like, I don't like it. But then I sat with it for a while, and I'm like, I love it.
Isn't it? And you do shift and change as well.
So I sat with it, and I'm like, I really do. It does. And so it's, I read a book one time. I don't remember what book it was, so I don't want to say the wrong one. But they said, I wanted to ask you about so-and-so, but I didn't want you to start thinking about it. And it was a female author for sure, and she said, well, I'm always thinking about them, so you asking isn't going to upset me. I'm always thinking. And so it was nice early on when we had the loss, those first months, when people would say his name. I loved people saying his name. And so, like with the Ari Foss Foundation, we don't help babies. We don't help families who lost a baby. We help a family who lost a baby, Ari. And so we say the baby's name so that way your baby was
that's
real.
good.
And
Yes.
they were here. And if I do know someone in my circle who has a loss, I always make sure to say their baby's name because,
Yes.
there was a...
It's like this person was here.
Yeah, and they matter.
And they do matter, and people do crave hearing the name and memories that people have of that child. Even sometimes there aren't any that it was at birth, but sometimes the child lives a little bit longer. Just knowing that this baby existed, this child existed, and that I think that is so true that people do want to hear their name.
So it's so Ari was stillborn, so his birthday is also the day he passed.
Yeah.
And I'm a science guy, my background science, life starts, all that kind of stuff. I look at when I became a dad. I became a dad the morning Laura woke me up hyperventilating, telling me she was pregnant. I remember that moment. And so we lost Ari at full term, but I consider myself, I had been a dad for 9 months.
Yes,
That's when my life changed.
Right.
That's when I was like, oh no, I gotta grow up. But I didn't say oh no, there was a 4-letter word in there. So I gotta grow up and be an adult now.
Yeah,
Things are real.
Yeah,
So,
it gets real.
But this is wonderful, by the way. Thank you.
I'm enjoying myself so
really
much.
enjoying this conversation.
Yeah, me too. It's great.
So there's another saying, time heals all wounds.
Yes.
I consider grief to be a wound, and we are coming up, well, as of recording this, we're getting close to, been 12 years since we've lost Ari. By the time it's published, that July 30th would already passed. I don't think time heals all wounds now, because that wound isn't healed yet. Now, I'm in a different spot than I was 12 and a half years ago. I'm even in a different spot than I was a year ago.
Yes.
So when we started the Ari Foss Foundation, I went and talked to the families. Everything was via email. They couldn't call because I wasn't in the space to talk with them. And then I wanted to help from afar. And then it got to where I can do emails. And then people could call the office number and I would talk to them. And earlier this year, one of the fathers asked if we could meet for coffee. I was like, oh my God, no, I can't. This is me thought. I was like, I can't. And then I was like, you know what? This guy's being brave and asking me to meet. I have to say yes. And so I did. We went and had coffee. I would not have been able to do that 2-3 years ago. And so I'm still moving in my journey.
Yes.
And so that was a great experience meeting him. He's a very nice gentleman. We got to talk about, he asked for some advice. We talked about his situation. And so it was just so grief is a journey. It's a long, long journey, but it does change. So from your experience, what does that shift look like years or even decades down the road?
Sure.
Real quick.
Yeah.
I've had people tell me, why haven't you just gotten over it and moved past it? And
that's lovely.
So that's should we ever get past it? Or, but the new normal does become part of us. So
yes, it is. So I don't believe that you ever resolve grief. I think you reconcile. Okay. Resolving would mean that you have completely gotten to a point where it doesn't bother you anymore. All right. How can that happen, really? Yeah. So if you reconcile to something, you accept it. You accept that on this, no matter what your beliefs are, whether you're going to see that person again, that child again, whether you don't know whether that will happen or not, or whether you don't believe that you will, that shapes your life. It's not the only thing that shapes our lives, but it doesn't just disappear. I've spoken to older people who still remember that child, and they can remember everything about that child. They may not remember what they had for breakfast, but they can tell you what color hair that child had, how that child's face looked, and so this doesn't go away, but it doesn't hurt and pain the way it used to. And I think it can inform your life as to what trajectory, as you put it, you go on and what path you go on. It can influence and impact that, but in a very positive way, not just a negative way. So the journey changes. It has for me tremendously. But it informs, and I did have a 4-year-old son, and so now that son is significantly older, and I had a subsequent child. This is a child after the loss, okay, which you also have had 2 subsequent children. And so Carl remembers Jesse as when he was very young. He remembers a little bit here and there in pictures and so forth, whereas Abby never met Jesse, but still it affects her, and she wanted to know more, and she wanted to see about what Jesse was like and what he looked like. And so there are pictures and things. It becomes easier to handle all that. But I think it changes us, but sometimes it can be in very wonderful ways.
Yeah, I've become more empathetic since it's happened, but I've also become more not empathetic.
Oh, interesting.
So when someone has a real situation, totally understand I'm there. When someone is making things up, the BS meter goes off, and I'm like, no, we've got no time for nonsense. So when it's nonsense, I'm like, move on. I don't want to deal with it. Like in my business world, like when it comes my way, I'm like, nope, we're done, move on. Like, I just don't care. You lied, I have no...
Yes,
you dropped the ball here, you're not owning up to it, I don't care. Something actually happens, we will work with you, how can we help and move forward? And so, like, there is that line in the sand. Some people will tell you, wow, this guy's so nice and empathetic. And other people are like, he's so hard and just kind of a not nice guy. And I'm like, it's because you took advantage of the situation. Like, I don't like it when people take advantage of situations. And so I've diverged on that. And so most people know me as the empathetic nice guy, but there's a few who are like, what?
Well, along those lines, I know I was in my 30s when I lost Jesse, and I remember as I was coming out of the deep grief and the walking around in circles and the surrealism of having this loss. And I started to realize what people around me were talking about. I was like, I had no patience. Like, they're talking about their kitchen cabinets didn't come in correctly, or, my sunroof isn't working. And it was just like they were talking another language to me. I couldn't relate to people my own age that were just living life like normal people because I had no interest. It was like that changed. Over time, I was able to talk about things that really are not so significant. But at that time, I remember not having that patience and also for BS too, that I didn't care so much what anybody thought of me anymore. It was just, hey,
Yeah, small talk is still hard for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, what's the point?
Right.
Let's talk about important stuff. And because I do want to know, like, everyone's dealing with something.
Yes.
And so it's, so like, even when I go out to happy hour with my friends, like, I ask them how they're doing, and they'll being dudes, they always give that cursory answer. And I'm like, no, for real, how are you doing? Like, and so we do talk about the nonsense stuff as well and have fun, but like, it's just harder for me to do that even now. Yeah. And so it's, have you, or do you know the Marvel movies, the Hulk?
Oh, yeah.
So before this, we talked about both and. And so I had mentioned, well, as you know, you referred me to her. When I went to therapy, Trish was my therapist. She was working in our center, in your center here, and she taught me both and so it took me a long time to learn that I could be both happy and sad at the same time. And it is so, like, we fast forward to now, like, I'll be watching a kids movie and I'll start tearing up.
Yeah.
And the reason is because I'm always sad, but I can be happy at the same time. Kind of like the Hulk. Like in those later movies when he's the Hulk, but yet he's still Steve Bannon, and he's like, the key is I'm angry all the time now, and so I can control it. And so I'm much more able to control my sadness now because I'm always sad. And so like for me, that's how the grieving journey has shifted over the years, is I've now more embraced it than trying, like I don't run from it anymore. It's just part of me.
Yes. So. And when you talk about both, and what Aaron's talking about is you can feel two divergent feelings about the same thing. And I'll give you an example. It's not of a loss of a child, but let's say an elderly parent dies, and the caretaker daughter feels relief as well as great sadness that her mother's gone, because it was a lot of a burden, okay? And so you can feel guilt about the way someone died, but at the same time you can feel joy about the memories you do have of that person. So you can feel completely opposite feelings about the same thing. In our society, we like to know it's black or white. You're either sad, you're depressed, and we're so much more complex than that. And that's why I think it's important to be careful about just glossing over this and running away for too long, or medicating oneself, or substance abuse, things that will cover these feelings up, because wounds do not heal unless they go through all the stages of healing. You can have a wound that will never heal if you don't allow it to heal. And unlike you, I am happy. I'm a little bit further in the journey. I'm a bit older than you. I'm not sad all the time anymore. There's sadness in me. When I think about those things, I can cry at a Kodak commercial. But what I'm saying is that I feel connected to Jesse in a way that is hard to explain. It's the relationship with the person changes over time, even if they're not here. And there is a point at which many of my patients and I have felt where that baby or that person who's gone is a part of us, that somehow we are joined. And I remember the time it happened with me. I was sitting on a staircase, and sun was coming through the skylight, and I had this overwhelming feeling that Jesse's heart was in my heart, and it never left. So I think maybe also giving birth might change something, that person, and you don't have to give birth. I mean, the DNA connects you, and so, it's a wonderful feeling when you finally can turn a corner and just freely laugh about something, and that happens.
Yeah, that's great. And it's the thing that I like the most about hearing you talk is the journey. As long as you're willing to work through it, it does get better. And so it's if you're unwilling to work through it, it won't get better.
Right.
So just taking the time to work through it and talk, and rely on someone if they can, go get therapy. And so, yeah, I look forward to when there's no sadness at all in there.
Yes.
But I'm much further than I used to be. So like right now I'm smiling and having a good time. And
you see a change, over time.
Yeah, I am definitely not where I was 6 years ago, which is great. Like I'm
Thank God.
So much happier where I am at now, because especially like when Haley was born, I was happy Haley was born, but then I'd feel guilty about being happy because my son was dead.
Yes.
And then rationally I would think, well, that's just silly. You're allowed to be happy, but then I'm like, but your son's still dead. And so like it was just this downward spiral that like my logic and my emotions weren't matching. And so every time logically I said, well, you should be happy, I would then feel guilty for not being able to feel happy. So it was like this crazy downward spiral, and like both ends saved me. I mean, like that,
Yes.
like both,
That's
just
good.
2 little words and just.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. So yeah. So very heavy topics, but let's move on to the biggest heavy topic that has happened to the U.S. in the last 30 years, 9/11. Did when you helping firefighters and other first responders through their trauma, did that change anything in how you help with individuals going through grief counseling? Are there any parallels?
Oh, yes. I think that was the biggest learning ground that I had as a younger therapist, was to be living in a bedroom community of New York City. At the time of 9/11, 23 souls from my town died.
Oh,
and
wow.
so we had the Cantor Fitzgerald folks, we had firefighters, and I ended up working for the New York City Fire Department and seeing them. And so what I really learned a lot at that time, Aaron, was about trauma and how trauma affects loss. And it affected them so much, and I had such a learning curve to find out how to help these people. And I especially remember this captain, John Newell, who I've spoken about and talked with him in front of people. He lost 33 people that either worked under him at some time, with him, alongside of him. And the day of 9/11, he switched the day with his partner, Bobby. They switched off, which they used to do all the time. They would switch off with each other. If you had something to go to and you couldn't make work, they would switch off. And that was the day that Bobby died. And so his guilt and his survivor guilt and his trauma and his pain was so significant. And these guys were going back down there at what they called digging in the pile. They would go back down and they would dig through the cinders to try to find a boot or something, so that the families would have something visible that they would bury, and they would grieve and have a service, and they would just have a ring from somebody, and some had nothing. So it was a very difficult time for me, because it was so filled with this pain. But I learned so much about trauma and have carried it to today. And so it has informed my practice and my life in so many ways. I speak about it, I write about it. But on a happier note now, I am writing fiction at this point, and I am writing a trilogy, and it's about a widow, but it is not just sad, and it is not just, it's about how she gets back on her feet and starts her life over again. So that's been kind of a fun thing for me to do as a departure. But I will say that time also shaped me, like the loss of my son, and as each thing in our lives does, right?
Yeah, everything shapes us. I just can't imagine going through that, and that gentleman you mentioned, the survivor's guilt. I mean, again, it was something that they did all the time, of switching shifts.
Yeah.
But this was the time something horrible happened, so he's gonna blame himself.
It was
even
awful.
though he shouldn't, because it was something they always did.
Yeah.
And so, wow.
Yeah. It was heavy, but he made it through. He was he's an incredible guy, and he made it through. I got to see him start to come alive again. He started to put a little bit of weight back on. He got color in his face. He really did look like the living dead for a while. It was so tough. So anyway, yeah.
So, wow, that's...
And after that, I moved to Charleston.
Okay.
Because it was almost like, okay, it's so heavy. And then after I moved here, the Sofa Superstore fire happened.
Oh, yeah.
And I ended up helping the fire department here. So I was around firemen again and firewomen again. And but it actually was wonderful, and I feel I have a heart for them. for the work they do. They run in when we run out,
Yeah.
They're amazing.
Yeah, that's incredible work that you did there.
Yeah, it was good work.
Well, we've covered a lot of stuff.
Yes, we have.
This has been great and wonderful. So we'll wrap it up. But if you could leave our listeners and families with one item who have experienced this kind of loss, there's one main, or many points we'd love them to take, but there's just one main thing you'd like them to take from
That's
the
always
podcast.
so hard. To allow yourself and your loved ones the time that it takes to get through this and heal completely. Not to run, not to get lost in a substance, not to get married 5 minutes after your husband or wife dies. To allow yourself to grieve completely, heal completely, so that you can go forward as a whole person, and this can affect you in not just a negative way.
Before I close out, I want to throw this out there. Journey's not a straight line.
Right.
You do have your ups and your downs, and you can be going good for a while, and then something's going to knock you down for a few days or weeks.
Yes.
So don't do what I do and then get knocked down and then spiral down again. And so, because it is a journey, just like every journey we take, there is no straight line.
No, there is not. And that's a very good point.
Yeah. So, well, Judy, thank you very much for sharing today, both professional and personal experiences. This has been, for me, truly wonderful. So thank you. They have their book. Are there any other resources where people can reach out to you if you want them to, we
have a whole beautiful group of therapists and counselors here at the Life Guidance Center in West Ashley, and that handle all kinds of things, including grief and trauma. There's several of us that do that work here. So feel free, if you ever want to get in touch with me in any way, you can email me at judyheaththerapist@gmail.com. And I also want to mention the work that you and your wife are doing, and the beautiful organization that you started that is helping families that go through this loss. So I can't believe the transformation of going through the pain you went through to what you're doing 6 years later. It's incredible, and I'm honored to be asked as a guest.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, those kind comments. So thank you again, and maybe one day we can revisit this topic.
Great, so, I'm here.
All right, well, y'all, if you have any questions, you can reach out to us at the Ari Foss Foundation. You can find us on social media. arifossfoundation.org is our website. You just Google us, you're going to find us. We also have a private Facebook group where families can share and ask questions and find some resources there as well. But you can reach out to us, and if we can, we'll point you in the right direction. Hope you enjoyed it, and reach out to us. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Forever Remembered podcast. If today's conversation helped you, please share this episode with someone who you think may need it as well. You can learn more about the Ari Foss Foundation and our mission to support families after loss at arifossfoundation.org and our social media. Remember, your baby is forever remembered, and you are never alone. We'll see you next time.